For this tutorial, I'm going to be covering unit groups. A unit group is sort of like an array or a linked list of units. However, it can find unit values within it a bit faster than a standard vjass linked list, and this could be because it's C++ code, it perhaps has a tree in the background, or it could be some sort of a resizing array. It's really unknown exactly what a unit group is. But for our purposes, unit groups store units and remove units. And when you enumerate units on the map, like selecting all units of a type or owned by a player or something or other, those units get stored into a unit group. So let's go ahead and create a unit group. And then over here, we're going to end up writing a loop. And at the end, we're going to destroy the unit group. You'll always have to destroy handles when you're done with them. Otherwise, the handles just sit there and sit there. And then also notice that the pointer for this unit group is being stored in this variable here. Now, when the variable goes out of scope, that is when the function ends, that pointer isn't going to get released. It only gets released if we set the variable to null. Now, this might not seem like a big deal, but the pointers end up spamming the handle table with more and more pointers, making the handle table grow, making everything go slower, and then finally the map will crash because the handle table will completely overflow. So it's always a good idea to know handle variables when you're done using them, and you only want to destroy, or rather null, destroyable handle variables. Knowing player IDs is kind of pointless because you can't destroy them, so the handle pointer isn't going to leave the handle table regardless of if you know it or not. But you do want to know things like groups and units and so on. Even if you don't destroy them in the function, that pointer will still be referenced. And what Warcraft 3 likely uses is a counter system. So when a variable is set to a pointer, the counter for that pointer increases. When it's nulled from a pointer, the counter for that pointer decreases. And when the counter hits 0, it can be freed from the handle table. And there are two types of garbage collection. One is the counter system, and the other is a search and destroy, more sort of garbage collection where it scans over everything. And the search and destroy, the scanner, is what StarCraft 2 uses, so you don't have to actually know anything in StarCraft 2. So moving on, the first thing we probably want to do is add a unit to the unit group here. So let's go ahead and create a unit. And here I'm going to create a footman for player 0 at 0, 0, and 270. And then I'm going to add it to the unit group. And now that footman is in the unit group, and I can go ahead and create a second footman here. And how about we actually create a barracks? And then I can add that to the unit group. And then I can remove them from the unit group. So I can go call group, remove unit, unit group, U. Now the footman's no longer in the unit group. And I can do that with U2 as well. So pretty straightforward. Now there are two ways to iterate over a unit group. The first way is what's called using the for group way. And this uses a callback and a native called for group. So first let's go ahead and create the callback function. So how about we just call it callback. And now we don't need this loop here. We just call the for group native. Call for group, pass in the group, and then pass in the function. For every single unit in that group, this function is going to be called. And to retrieve the current unit that's being called for, we use the getEnum unit native. And that will just retrieve the current unit. And we can go ahead and view all the units in the group by doing call print getUnitName getEnum unit. And so that should display a footman and a barracks. And right there, footman, barracks. So if you notice, they get put in just like a queue, and then you can remove them just like a linked list. So it's pretty great, I suppose. Now the other type of loop is called the first subgroup loop, or FOG for short. And this type of loop can only ever iterate over a group one time. Once it's iterated over a group, that entire group is empty. However, it is much faster than the for group loop. So typically, what you'll be using groups for is enumerations over the map. For example, selecting every barrack on the map, selecting every unit of a type or every unit owned by a player, and then you'll be using a first of group loop to go through that group and pick everything out, because you only ever need that group for that one instant. The first of group starts by, how about we first populate the group below. So I'm going to go ahead and put these directly in now. Oh. How about we change that to bar, and I'll keep this unit variable up here. Now the first thing we need to do is get the very first unit in a group, and that's done with the first of group native. So set u equal first of group unit group. Now if the first unit in the group is null, that means the unit's group is empty, so we probably want to exit at that point. And how about we do exit when u equal null. And now after this, so that we go into the second unit of the unit group on the next iteration, we want to remove that first unit from the unit group. So unit group u. Now we have this unit to work with. And how about we just display the name here? So this should once again display footmen and barracks. However, this time it will empty out the group in the process because of this group remove unit here. Keep in mind though that it is much faster than the for group loop. So here we go, footmen and barracks. So unit groups don't seem all that useful compared to linked lists, because the for group is not going to be a linked list in terms of iteration, and the first of group makes it you can only iterate it over one time, so you'd end up having to copy the entire group over to another group, and at that point a linked list is going to beat it either way. So where are groups used? Groups are primarily used for group enumerations, and a group enumeration essentially goes over the map and picks units off of the map. So let's go ahead and place some units on the map. How about we place a few barracks here, and then we'll place some footmen, and then how about a paladin? So we go back over here. Let's keep our group loop here so that we can display every unit that ends up going into the group. So what we're going to end up doing here is a group enumeration. And we just start with group enum units, in, and here we have a few options. We can enum units in range counted. The counted natives do not work. They are essentially infinity, so the counted parameter is useless. So just don't use the counted natives. The player counted native does work, so you can use that one, but not these. So here we have in range of loc, in rect, and then we even have of player of type. For now, let's do of player. And if we look back over here, every single one of these units is owned by player red. So how about we pass in red over here? Player, unit group, player 0, and then the Boolean expression filter is just a method that can act like a filter. But again, these are dynamic functions, so they are much slower. They are like trigger evaluations. And triggers are way slower than function calls, so just keep this null. It would be nice if they were like regular function calls, but they aren't. And that's the reason why the for group native is a lot slower than the first of group loop, because the function callback is like a trigger action, almost. Or rather a trigger evaluation, so it's very slow. Anyways, let's go ahead and save this now. And it should display all the units owned by player 1. Here we go, paladin, footmen, and then barracks. So all of these units made it into the unit group. We can also group in enum units of type, which is probably the most useful. And how we do that here is it expects a string name, the unit name, to be enumerated over. Now don't be confused here. If we go to the object editor here, these unit names like peasant, footman, knight, these aren't the actual unit names. There's actually a native that will retrieve the unit name though, given an ID. So we'll do unit ID to string, and we'll pass in the unit ID here. And how about we do barracks? So now this should retrieve all of the barracks. And also I'm going to do call print unit ID to string hbar to show precisely what the unit name for barracks is. Here we go. So the unit name for barracks is actually human barracks in lowercase. And there it selected these 4 barracks. So now you may be wondering, well, what can this be used for? Well, one of the great things this can be used for is spawning type maps like Footman Wars. So we could even start a Footman Wars map right now. Let's go ahead and make a little timer or method called spawn. And then on init, we're just going to call timer start, create timer. Oh. Then how about for every 5 seconds, we're going to create a unit at every barracks. Then over here, let's make this group a private global field. This way we don't have to recreate it every single time. Save a little speed there. Here we're going to put the local unit U. Then we are going to move all this over. And instead of printing now, we're going to create a little unit. So we're going to create a footman for the owning player of the current unit. So this retrieves the owning player. We're going to pass in footman, then get unit X, U, get unit Y, U, so that retrieves the coordinates. And then how about we do also get unit facing U. And now this should create a footman at every single barracks every 5 seconds. And let's go ahead and change these footmen to player 2. Now we'll go back here and save, run it. Every 5 seconds there should be a footman. So now player 2 is attacking us. But we are about to outnumber them, aren't we? There are our footmen. So let's go ahead and kill player 2 there. Oh, got even more reinforcements. And player 2 is just about dead here. These are regular barracks, as you see, just the ladder. So all this stuff is still in here. That's pretty much how Footman Wars maps work. They aren't as nice as what I just did here. They are much crazier, weirder, I guess. But this is a very easy way to spawn all units. And if you want more types, we could have like call timer start 7 function, this type spawn 2, copy all this, and we could also put this in a module, as you see, and make this a constant. And over here we're going to do, how about at castles, whatever the castle ID is. Let's look that up. So a castle, HCAS, we're going to spawn a knight. I believe that's the knight. Let's go ahead and put a castle on now. Let's go ahead and save that. And yep, every 7 seconds. So now this should spawn a knight. There are the footmen, and there's the knight. More footmen and another knight. So that is the usefulness of unit groups in a nutshell. And notice here that I did not clear the unit group because this loop clears it for me, and I'm using the same unit group in both of these. So that saves on memory. That means I don't have to create and destroy unit groups over and over again. Unit groups really are a wonderful thing.